All right. Well, thank you so much for reaching out to me, and I'm looking forward to answering some of your questions.
hmm And so, like, can you tell me about your career path experience? Like, how did you choose this major? And like, can you just introduce a bit about like from
Yeah.
your college experience and stuff?
Yeah. So that's a great question. Makes me think back. I went to undergrad at UC Berkeley,
hmm
and that was back in 2012, 2011. That's when I started.
Okay.
And I thought I wanted to go to medical school like a lot of people, and then very quickly realized
Same.
that I didn't want to do that.
Okay.
And I found I was majoring. I decided I wanted to do psychology because I didn't want to major in biology. I couldn't, the classes were too hard. Um,
Of
and
course.
then in meeting with like other people in psychology, they were like, public health actually overlaps a lot, the coursework and just like the topics in general. Like you should look into double majoring. So I did, and I found out that um, public health was a really good option for me in terms of double majoring. So I went for it, ended up falling in love with public health more than psychology, but I kept the double major anyway. And, at that time I was like, do I want to go to like, pharmacy school, PA school, nursing school, like some other health related field. I wasn't sure. So I kind of took some time off after graduating and worked, and I kind of knew I wanted to get an MPH, but it just took me a while to like study for the GRE and like get my act together. But then finally I did. I applied to a bunch of programs, got into Yale, and decided that's where I wanted to go for my MPH. And I was like, okay, I'm kind of not going to go the like health profession route. And I want to do the more sort of like community based work, and approach health from a more population level versus like the individual healthcare level. Um, During my MPH, I did a summer internship with my current mentor, actually, who introduced me to the world of adolescent substance use prevention research and conducting school based intervention and education. And I fell in love with that research. And she asked me one day, she's like, what do you want to do? What's your career like dream? And I'm like, I want to be a professor. I want to teach. I want to mentor students. And she's like, well, if you want to do that, you have to get a PhD. Like you can't, just stop at your master's. And I was like, okay, fine. It was kind of always in the back of my head that that was a possibility. And then I just went for it, applied to PhD programs, and then got into Harvard somehow magically. And from there, it's history. So now I've graduated now. I'm on the other side, and I'm a postdoctoral researcher, and still
And
studying adolescent substance use prevention, and hoping to design school-based interventions.
that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing so
Yeah.
much with me. Yeah, so that's very interesting, like how you decided to work and then go into a MPH.
Yeah.
And
I
then
guess I
so
didn't mention this. My
before
2 years that I worked, I actually didn't even do public health or psychology or anything related to my majors. I was working at a small Chinese pharmaceutical company, and then I that didn't work out for me. And then I started working at a recruiting firm. And again, I like was good at my job, but I didn't wake up like excited to go to work ever. So I was like, this is not something that I'm going to be doing long term. I knew. And I think that's why I always knew I had to go back to school. And now I do wake up and I'm like so excited to like start my day every day now, which I know is like cheesy for me to say, but I really do like get out of bed like really excited to like work on all my to-do lists or whatever.
Yeah. So how many years did you spend in Harvard's PhD?
So when I started the program, it was designed as a 4-year program, and I followed that 4-year plan. Now it's a 5-year program because they've added, some people wanted the additional year of guaranteed funding. So they've just made that option for everyone. And there's more teaching and research requirements now, but then everyone gets a guaranteed 5th-year funding. But I took 4 years. I wanted to sort of be done with school, so I finished in 4 years.
That's nice. I feel like most PhD programs are 5 year and more, and it also like depends on what you do at the end. So like depends
Yeah.
on that depends how long you can graduate depends on your PhD advisor, right? Kind of.
Sort of, yeah, or just like the kind of project you choose to take on for your dissertation. I would say because I did a master's that, I mean, didn't really help because it's not like I took less courses, but yes, the PhD took 4 years, but I did do a 2-year master's before that. So in total, I was in grad school for 6 years.
Okay. So so like if you remember from your application, what other schools did you apply?
Yeah, I applied to about 10 schools. I don't know if you saw this, but I actually have a website, like another website, not my YouTube
Yeah.
channel.
Oh,
It's like a
okay.
blog that I talked about like every step that I took when I was applying from
Oh
start
yeah.
to
You
finish.
mentioned you
Yeah, so I can
mentioned
send you the link
maybe.
to that. But on there has all the schools that I applied to. But I applied to a good spread of a couple of Ivy League schools. I applied to NYU. I applied to a lot of schools in California because my family's from California and I thought I
That's
wanted
nice.
to end up here in California.
So like except for Harvard, you were always on the West Coast,
Yeah, Harvard and Yale. Yeah, I
basically.
was always on the, yeah. And then I moved to the
How
coldest
did
part
you
of the
feel?
United States.
Yeah, like Northeast. How did you feel about the two differences, like being on the East and the
Yeah.
West?
So, my transition to Yale, so that was like the big move that I made from California to Yale for my master's. And in my head, I was like, oh, wow, this is like, I need sort of a change in scenery. Like, I've been in California my whole life. I get to now like experience a completely different, like I was really excited at first, I think, but then when I actually moved over there, like I'll tell you this, like my parents helped, they came with me, they flew across with me and they helped me move and everything. And like I remember this, we were sitting at a nice steakhouse in New York City because I was treating them to dinner for like helping me move. And I was
Yeah.
just crying the whole dinner, like at this fancy steakhouse. And my parents were like, what is going on with you? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just scared. Like, it's all hitting me now that I'm like moving here and like I'm so far away from everything I know. And I'm about to start this new program, new everything. Like, it was scary, you know? And
Yes.
I would say that I didn't have like the smoothest transition in like school was like different, like I had to figure out how to make friends again, like it was like not an
Yeah.
easy transition, you know. And it was hard not to like compare myself with the people around me, and everyone was like, oh, grad school, you're gonna make so many friends, it's gonna be so fun, you're just gonna be like out partying and drinking and like barely studying. But that's not what I was doing. So it took a while for me to like get my footing. And then once I found it though, I like fell in love with the East Coast. That's why I was okay with staying in Boston for another 4 years for my PhD. And
Nice.
I made a lot of lifelong friends.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
That's
I always think that, it's important for me to share with people that it's not always the smoothest. And, you know,
yeah.
um, it's, and that's okay. Like you said, everything does tend to
Yeah.
work out in the end. Um,
Yes, and if it
and
doesn't work out, you can always just go back. Right? There's always another choice. You
true.
can always move to other
That's
places.
it's
Yeah.
temporary. It's only like a 2 to however many year program. So that is always
Yeah.
one
Yeah,
part of it.
that's right.
People appear to be doing something or they're posting pictures on social media of them doing something, but in reality, that's not actually, there might be other things going on that you're just not seeing. People
Yeah.
really are kind of putting forth kind of their best image. And that's kind of what I had to tell myself too, is like, other people are probably feeling not like 100% at home. And even though it doesn't seem that way, I just have to kind of like trust that I will find my home here soon.
Yeah. That's what I do too. Like I won't post anything sad or bad about myself on social media, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
So actually back to the topic. So I know you mentioned that one of the things that you think is the most important is connecting with professors before you submit your application. Can I now reach out to them and say like, hi, I have submitted my application and I want to like talk to you before, everything comes up, when the decision comes out, like whether I get the interviews or not. Do you think it's still I can still do that?
yeah, it
Or is
definitely
it too
doesn't
late?
hurt. I think, yeah, I would just phrase it in a way of like, I know I've already submitted my application. I'm really excited. Um, and I would love to speak with you just to learn more about your research. And just, yeah, just be like very open. I wouldn't even harp too much on the fact that your application is already in. I would just say like, I submitted my application. I'm really looking forward to potentially coming to this program. Can I talk to you more about your research? And then just see how they respond. They might just say like, I might see you in the interview, or they might be like, yeah, like let's talk. So you never know what they'll say. But even just you
Yeah.
telling them shows that you care and you like took the time to look them up and reach out. So I don't think it hurts. I know some people like to say don't reach out. I'm always a fan of reaching out because you
Yeah.
just never know who's reading your application first. It's all still going to be read by some human being in that department. And
That's
I think it just never hurts. And then in the actual, I mean, you can't do this now, but then in your actual statement, you like your personal statement, you can say like, I spoke with Professor X and
Yeah,
we had a great conversation, so that's kind of why I do recommend people reach
that
out.
would be helpful.
Yeah. But it's not too late now. Like I said,
Yeah,
you can
and
still email and say like, hey, I've applied. My application is in. I'm really looking forward to being reviewed, but like I also want to chat with you and learn more about your research. Even before the interview. I don't know. You can come up with a way of phrasing it. And if they just say, I just wouldn't
sounds
take it, like they
amazing.
might just respond being like, your application's in. I'll look forward to like meeting you at the interview if you get an interview. That might be a typical response, or they might say yes and talk to you. So you never know.
So was it during like summer when you reached out to them?
I did it in late September through late November. Those were like, that was the
Oh,
range of dates for my calls. So yeah, I was having
yeah.
calls up until like right before I was submitting. So
Okay.
yeah.
So what about like the interview times? What is the typical interview times?
Yeah. So you'll probably start hearing back. So a lot of applications get reviewed over the holiday. And then you'll start hearing back in January and February about interviews.
And then interviews after interviews, they would take like a month or 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Yeah, so it depends on the program, but yeah, generally after the interview, you find out in like a couple weeks to a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I see. And when you get into Harvard, do you think they like what do you think they look at the most? Or do they look at applicants' publications or like
I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I mean, I do think that not having a master's is um does put you at a slight disadvantage just because you haven't had the same coursework and like research that you might have had if you did get a master's. But even having said that, there are a lot of, not a lot, but like there's a good number of students in at least my program, population health sciences at Harvard, that went straight from undergrad or didn't have a master's degree before applying. So it's not a requirement to get in. It just is
yeah.
something that helps in a way. Then back to your question of like, what do they look for in their applicants? I wish I knew the answer to this. A lot of people ask me this all the time. And honestly, like I said, there's still days where I wake up and I don't know why I got in, like it's really it's a more subjective process than you would think. And sometimes there are people or students that have like so many publications, so much research experience, all the passion, the drive is there, and they don't get in. And it's just a numbers game is what I start telling people. You just never know like what they're looking for that application cycle. And they get so many applicants and they can only pick so many that it
Yeah.
doesn't come down to like how good your CV is or what's on your CV. It's just kind of like, okay, like we have so many good CVs. Like how do we even decide? Like they're all equally good, and
Mm.
they have to somehow make a decision between these people. So I I can't read the minds of the admissions committees, but like my advice always is that like you've done your best, you put together your best possible application, your personal statement, everything. You've done everything you can. And you just have to kind of, like you said, trust that everything will work out. Know that, if you apply to more schools, that usually will help your chances of getting in at least somewhere, maybe not your dream school, but a school, because no matter where you get your PhD, it's still a PhD.
Yeah.
So that's why I always advise people to try and apply broadly to a large range of
Yeah.
schools because you never know what's going to happen in the application process.
When you like talk to the professors, you reach out, what what would you look for in their research? Because I feel like when I was looking at the professors' websites, I can't really find like completely relevant research. I can only find like, oh, we're both doing public health, both doing regression, or we're both doing like race, ethnicity. Like it's like very generally, but not
Yeah.
actually relevant.
So I would do your best to try to find someone like something a little bit more than just, using the same method, unless
Yeah.
that is a really unique niche method. But like for me, even though I study adolescent vaping, that was kind of what I was focused on. I really reached out to any professor that was doing work in tobacco. So you can try to find that overarching umbrella field. Like, okay, they might be not be doing the exact glaucoma research that you're doing, but maybe
You
something
could pick
similar. And then you can still like maybe like eye health. I don't know. You can try and reach out to those
Oh my God.
professors.
Oh, and also like one last quick question. When you when you got into like Harvard PhD, like if you look at your peers, what would you think? Like how many of them have like a master's degree or like have a lot of publications and stuff?
Yeah. So I would say that like no, at least from my understanding, and I don't want to speak on behalf of all my, classmates, but
Yeah.
I would say a lot of them didn't have like a ton of publications. They maybe some had like one or two. There were people who had no publications and or like publications were still in review. Um, so that's the publication stuff. And then what was your other question you asked?
Like, how many of them had a master's
Oh, had a
degree?
master's. I would
Yeah.
say like most did, like maybe 8
Okay.
out of 10 had a master's,
Okay.
but you never know. Like I said, there are still people who get into these programs. So I wouldn't use that as the actual, like, you never know, is all I can say.
I see. And then like when you talk to the professors, when you reach out to them, like I don't know, like what would you want to talk with them? Like what do you want to show them to show them that like you want to do research with them, or just like show your passion in the field, or like
So if you go on my website, I know I've referenced this so many times on this
yeah.
call. I actually
Yeah.
like outline a little like kind of this is how a call with a professor should go. So you can follow that to kind of, have some structure to your phone calls.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think, and then you should like you also need to like read a lot about their profiles and their publications and like what they're actually doing
Yeah, I
before
mean,
we
I would
schedule.
say that you don't have to like do a deep dive in their, and do a whole lit review on all of their work. I mean, part of the call is meant also for you to get to know that professor and talk to them about they're going to be really excited telling you all about all their current projects. They're not expecting you to like get on the call and be like, okay, I want a summary of my research now. Like that's not what they're looking for. Like it's a conversation. It's not really, it's almost, I think would be strange. Like I think you should have a general idea of a couple of their like recent papers or recent work, but it's not a time for you to like look up everything they've ever done and summarize it on the call. That's not what the call is meant for.
I think for now that's it. And if I have any other, I will definitely email you.
Yeah,
Thank you so
definitely
much
email
for
me. Yeah, of course.
okay,
All
it's
right.
really
Well,
helpful.
thank you.
All right,
Have
thank
a great rest of your
you.
weekend, okay?
Yeah, have a good night.